Welcome back to my PCT so far, part 3, trail days 9 through 13. Starting on August 4th, we were dropped off by Southern Minnesota guy at trail mile 2231.6, which is the Forest Service Road 23 with access to Trout Lake. And unfortunately, I forgot to turn on my Garmin tracking in my hurry to get all packed up and going. So my Garmin was not tracking my location during the beginning of this day. But we were hiking through a burn zone with views of Mount Adams, and we were getting closer and closer to the mountain. And because the burn zone removed a lot of the shade, there were a lot of different plants that were starting to grow that wouldn't otherwise do as well in a shadier condition. We saw some super cool bugs too. Not as many blowdowns as in previous sections that we had hiked, but lots of really cool geology. It was about lunchtime when I stopped and had our lunch break that I realized that my Garmin hadn't been tracking me for the morning, so I did turn it on at about lunchtime. The burn zone made it seem kind of otherworldly or spooky with the gray-white trees. It was right about supper time, and we started entering a lava flow area again, and these rocks were darker red than the previous lava flow that I had been walking through a couple days ago. And we stopped and we ate supper in the lava flow area. And that night our campsite was right at the base of Mount Adams, and it had the most beautiful view of the sunset on Mount Adams. Made it all rosy and pink. I did 13 miles that day. Day 10 started at trail mile 2242.9, and this was a pretty exciting day because we were going to cross Adams Creek, and this was the first major water crossing that didn't have a bridge. We were a little apprehensive about it, but we had gotten some information from other hikers that there were some trees we could cross, and we did find them. And Blue Magic was so close to the end, and then her foot stepped on some ice and she slipped, and one of her foot went right into the creek. Everything was okay, she was just a little damp. We continued to have beautiful views up close of Mount Adams, and we could see Mount Rainier in the distance. Some of the creeks had more glacial silt in them, so it gave them kind of a milky look, and those would clog your water filter if you tried to filter them. We had a nice break with Southern Minnesota guy. He brought us chips and water. This day I did 16.3 miles. Day 11 started at trail mile 2259.2, and the scenery just kept on being as gorgeous as ever today. We stopped and had a lunch break in a shade near a little creek, and we got to talk with some interesting hikers. One was from Hawaii, one was from Belgium, and we started talking about Hawaiian sovereignty. So you never know what conversation you might have with your fellow hikers while you're stopped for lunch. This day we were set to cross Sispus Pass, and as we kept on climbing up, we saw more and more snowbanks. Most of the time the snowbanks weren't really a problem, except when you lost the trail. So we were looking for the Sispus Pass, and we came upon a snow drift, and we took a left and kept on kind of walking along the edge of the snow drift, expecting that we'd meet back up with the established trail eventually. But what ended up happening is that we kept on climbing up in elevation, and we actually lost the trail for a minute. But we got a bit of elevation on it. We were able to use our eyes to kind of scan the area, and we did end up spotting the turn that we had missed. We were able to hike back down, and we eventually did find the Sispus Pass and get back on the trail, but it was a little hair-raising there for a moment. After we crossed Sispus Pass, we were in this beautiful alpine cirque, like a big horseshoe-shaped valley, and it was just beautiful and green with lots of little waterfalls crossing over the path. We did have to cross over some snow, and we could hear the water running underneath it, and we were a little apprehensive about that, but it did turn out okay. That night we had a beautiful campsite. We did 14.8 miles that day. Day 12 on the PCT started at trail mile 2259.0, and we started up in a beautiful alpine meadow, and we decided to have second breakfasts or first suppers. We made a spaghetti lunch at about 10:30 in the morning, and it was awesome. The views leading up to the Goat Rocks wilderness are just amazing. So as we started to climb up and up in elevation, we met another hiker from Japan, and she asked us if we were going to take the old snowy alternate, and we said no, and she said, well, why not? We said, because we're scared. We had read a lot about the Knife's Edge and the old snowy alternate, and we had psyched ourselves out a bit. So we decided we were going to take the stock route, not the old snowy alternate, and we thought, well, that'll solve that problem. It'll be fine. And what we didn't realize is that the stock route was equally as, well, maybe not equally as hair-raising, but definitely still hair-raising. And it involved crossing quite a lot of snow, and also quite a lot of cobblestone fields. We met another hiker coming the other way, and we asked him how he was doing. He said, I'm building character. We could look up on the ridge, and we could see tiny little people up on that old snowy alternate. We had beautiful views of Mount Rainier. And what we didn't realize is that we didn't bypass any hair-raising by not going on the old snowy alternate. The Knife's Edge was after the old snowy alternate, and it was still pretty darn exciting. Pretty narrow at times, with steep drop-offs on either side, and such stunning scenery and views of Mount Rainier that I had to stop and look at the mountain, and then look down at my feet, and then look ahead 20 feet, and then keep looking at my feet so that I wouldn't slip and fall off the trail. There were other hikers that were going a lot faster than Blue Magic and but they were very cool about saying, I'd like to pass when you feel comfortable. so we would find a little bit wider part of the trail and be able to pull off and let them pass. But there were some pretty narrow areas that were made us pretty stressed out. We were focusing very, very hard where we were putting each foot. We took a little break to check far out and see how far along we were. After we had passed the knife's edge portion, we were walking through more beautiful wildflower meadows, and we did 11.7 miles on this day. Day 13 on the PCT started at trail mile 2285.7. We were treated to more gorgeous views of Mount Rainier. This day we ended up hiking to the Cracker Barrel. That starts with a K, Cracker Barrel, not the chain restaurant, which was a little convenience store near White Pass. We didn't have a package that we had sent there to pick up, but plenty of other hikers had, and the stacks of these packages were taller than we were. We did 10.4 miles on this day. And sadly, Blue Magic had to leave me and go back to work, so the next section begins my solo adventures. Stay tuned for my PCT so far, part 4.